if you ask someone what is the best failure that they ever achieved, they'll probably give you a little bit of pause. But if you actually have a conversation with an extremely successful individual that goes on for more than 5 minutes or 10 minutes, it's very likely that they're going to say, "Well, one huge mistake or one huge failure or misstep was X, and I'll never forget it, and it was the best lesson I ever learned." But I think, Nancy, that it's quite possible that failure just has a bad name. Like it's, no matter how much we say it's important. We mentioned last week that we wanted to talk about it because it seems like people have the wrong attitude about it.
Yeah, I appreciate where you're coming from. And, I was thinking about the fact that for many of us, certainly myself, when I started school, it seemed like getting the right answer was the goal. Not so much even learning, but getting the right answer, which really translates, Hersh, to not failing. As opposed to succeeding, it was about not failing. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's a difference.
Yeah, there is a difference, and school is a great example because schools generally have functioned on a couple of things. One is conformity, where the idea is to fit into a certain line and do things within the lines and stay in line and all of that. And then, and obviously we know the toll that takes on individuality. And then pass fail. The idea that, yeah, as long as I don't fail, maybe I'll get a D or maybe I'll get a P, but as long as I don't fail. And that creates no pun intended, it sets us up for failure because
Yeah.
it sets us up for the notion that there's an alternative to absolute and utter success in a way, and it's not learning.
Yeah, it's not learning. It's so fascinating. I think I shared with you, there's an acronym that I recently came across for FAIL, which is first attempt in learning. And when you think about it, what is it to fail? Yes, it's getting it wrong, but it is usually the highlight, like you said, of learning, because I have gained more from my failures than when I got it right, especially if I got it right the first time, but I stumbled into the rightness. I stumbled into the answer. And did it stick with me? Not really, because failing actually helps me remember something. What do you say to that?
Yeah. It's not only does it help us remember something, it helps us set the stage for success, like you described. Success doesn't come fully formed. People aren't created fully developed. And as a writer, I know that what I give to clients as a first draft is never a first draft. It's
Yes,
never
it's true.
the first thing that just came out of my head. I know when it's gonna be good. I know when I cracked that initial first draft, concern, that I know it's going to be a good first draft. But it's just, we don't turn in our first of anything, our first drafts of anything. That's just the way it is.
Yes, it's so true. And so, I was thinking of how this applies. You're talking about copywriting and that the first draft is never the first draft. Well, in sales, there's something true about that as well, right? That the first time we meet people and we state our pitch and we present our information and we share with them what we do isn't necessarily that first time, and it doesn't necessarily equate to success. And again, the best salespeople, Hersh, they have a learning curve. Now they are fast learners, and so it looks like they become natural at it. But nonetheless, the best salespeople have learned because they've taken in the information from the other party, and they've adjusted themselves to that information.
That's why We call this know and sell. I have a phrase, before you brand yourself, know yourself. Um, a coach that I've become very friendly with, a peak performance coach named Constantine Maroon, has a phrase that is know thyself to unleash thyself, and it's all based on
Mhm.
you know error and stumbling and wandering in the dark and some happenstance, and there are so many great examples. In fact, I invite people who are tuning into this to put in the comments examples that you have found inspiring of failures, because they are too numerous to mention, and because the the idea is, we talk about how many touch points are needed in order to close a sale, right? Does that mean that every touch point beyond the closing is a failure? Obviously not. Of course not.
Yeah. Yeah, we are very hard on ourselves, especially as adults. Somehow we have more leniency when it comes to our younger selves, that we allow children to make mistakes, have errors and not get it right the first time. But here we are as entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs are constantly going through uh, recreating ourselves. We are constantly. I just came from a meeting with another fellow, and his message was, if you're a solopreneur, there's definitely been lots of change going on, and you are not doing the thing you started out to do at the beginning, because we are constantly in flux. Does that mean that we failed? Or are we, again, really good learners, that we look at the results of what is happening and we start to make adjustments? And that's all we can do, right? Is to take in the feedback and make adjustments.
And I'm guilty of it as well, where I'll be reading someone's book or an article or a post, and they will talk about some really talk frankly about some really tough outcomes, and I have that same stigmatic reaction too, where I'm like, oh man, that's terrible. And that's I think at the heart of my pointer for today, is that we can look at failure as, we can redefine failure
Mhm.
as learning, is
Yes.
really what it is. What is the worst that will happen if, as a community, we'll start with our know and sell insiders community. We start with communities that embrace experimentation and process. So process is the word that I want to replace. Not success, not experiment, even process. It's a
Mhm.
process. And I will make one other point, which is, as someone who served as a CMO and a chief creative officer, I have taken note of the short leash that's currently being given to CMOs as far as the expectations that are put on them in a lot of industries. Um, the pressure that they're under to deliver, and I just think that a lot of times, brands and employers will look at what marketing people and salespeople do as magnificent and magical when it goes their way, but they also seem to think that it's easy, and it can't be both. It can't be both transformative and incredible and amazing and easy. That's just not the way it works.
I remember the first time I was in the member of the National Speakers Association, and I heard Patricia Fripp. I'm not sure if you know who she is, but a motivational speaker from the UK who now lives in California. And her line was, it was only 20 years to an overnight success.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've always remembered that, because that really summarizes, from the audience's point of view, they see the success overnight, right? But from the practitioner's point of view, from our point of view, it's been 20 years of working towards that. So yes, we are we are redefining failure as, first attempt in learning, and hopefully the process of learning goes on.
Yeah, yeah, very well said. And I think it isn't even most people, whether they're in the entrepreneurial sector or the corporate sector, uh, are going to try and to go through this process many times in many different circumstances throughout their careers. So one success is never enough. You're only as good as your most recent success, right?
There you go.
So if we kind of change the board a little bit and we put process in there, you still have to deliver something. You still have to deliver the win, but it's just what, don't take the energy out of the process while you're doing it. Celebrate all the knowledge that you gain.
Amen. Love the celebration, Hersh. And with that, we are celebrating you. Thank you so much for participating and being there, listening to our Know and Sell pointers. We come to you Tuesdays at noon Eastern time, and we look forward to you joining us live. Or, of course, let us know if you're watching the replay. To your sales success, it's Dr. Nancy Zare
And Hersh Rephun, the message therapist.